Shalom. Peace be with all of you who have the opportunity to listen to this talk. And this talk is about consciousness and the 7 states of consciousness. It's important that I initiate this dialogue within the mundane realms, rather than the highest esoteric realms of Kabbalah, where the average person doesn't have an appreciation for the real true value of life. So in this talk today, we will talk about truth, consciousness, and the 7 states of consciousness. Ordinarily, we experience 3 states of consciousness: waking, dreaming, and sleep state of consciousness. And each state of consciousness is represented by a physiological correlate. Every state of consciousness has its own unique physiology. And as the physiology transforms, so does the mind, and its perception and grasp of reality changes. So there might be, and could be said that there are 7 states of reality. And within each state, reality is different. And in each state, the nervous system is functioning different. Take, for example, waking state. The nervous system is alert. The senses are engaged in the external world. We see the objective reality and encounter reality and go about our perfunctory business. The second state of consciousness is sleep state of consciousness. And in this state of consciousness, the nervous system is completely different from waking state. The mind is retired. It is sleep. We have no cognition of what's going on in the external world because we're in a deep slumber, a deep sleep, disconnected from the senses, essentially, and in a unique state of consciousness called sleep. We don't perceive anything, but we have another state of consciousness. The third state of consciousness is dreaming. When we're sleeping, then we have some release of stress. We call it REM sleep. We get rapid eye movement. The body is relaxing. The body is releasing stress. And this stress release is manifest in the form of dreams. So we have waking state of consciousness, sleep state of consciousness, and dream state of consciousness. And that's mostly what we experience. As most people experience only 3 states of consciousness. But this is in the redemptive cycle, which we've been called out of darkness, and society will make an exponential leap higher into self-awareness. So in 1974, a young PhD student at UCLA hooked some electrodes up to the brain when people were engaged in a state of meditation, and found out that the brain has a unique function in this meditative state, and the physiology has unique characteristics that are completely different from waking, dreaming, and sleeping state of consciousness. And so the term transcendental consciousness became very prominent. It was coined from this meditative state. It was called transcendental consciousness. And from that, the 4th state of consciousness was designated. So we have waking, sleeping, dreaming state of consciousness, and transcendental consciousness, a state of consciousness that is in a meditative state where consciousness goes beyond the mundane perfunctory realms of waking, sleeping, dreaming into a unique state of consciousness has been called restful alertness. That is, the mind being very alert, super alert, and yet the body in a very relaxed state of being. Restful alertness is the word that was coined. Restful alertness the fourth state of consciousness, transcendental state of consciousness. But the mind cannot remain in this state. It goes into and out of this fourth state of consciousness, doing the inward stroke of meditation. So meditation becomes a means by which we can access the fourth state of consciousness, which has been called that consciousness beyond waking, dreaming, and sleeping state, that beyond being transcendent, transcendental. So the fourth state of consciousness is called transcendental consciousness, a state of being that the mind experiences, and the body has a unique physiology that corresponds to a fourth state of being, a fourth state of consciousness. And as the mind goes into this fourth state of consciousness called transcendental consciousness, it has been discovered that intelligence, creative intelligence, is infused into the mind during this meditative state. So they're in and into this fourth state of consciousness, restful alertness. This fourth state of consciousness has been called pure being, the spirit world, pure consciousness, the unified field, a lot of different names that try to capture that laws of nature, that field from which all of the laws of nature that structure and determine relativity are said to be in this fourth state of consciousness, the home of all the laws of nature, the constitution of the universe, if you will, from which relativity arises. So we have the absolute level of pure being, which is absolute eternal, that manifests temporally in time as creative phenomena, points of creation on the infinite corridor of time, giving rise to everything in creation. This is the theory of my self-reflection practice, reflecting on the ultimate self, the self that is transcendental to our ethnicity, transcendental to our physical being, but is the source of the physical being. So that's the fourth state of consciousness: waking state, dreaming state, sleep state, transcendental consciousness, the four states of consciousness, each state of consciousness having a parallel, a corresponding unique physiological disposition, a unique functioning of the physiology. And perception is structured in the functioning of our physical mechanism, physiology, alertness. When the body is asleep, you don't see things. You dream about things, depending on the level of consciousness. You're in slumber, deep sleep, you don't see anything. It's just a deep sleep. And for a third state of consciousness, dreaming state, where we have some reality associated with that. We can fly, we can move, we can see through walls, we can do anything in that reality. It's called a dream state. And then a fourth state of consciousness is an abstract, pure state of being. The body is characterized in a state of restful alertness, and in this state of restful alertness, the mind is infused with the infinite intelligence of nature. The nature, all of the laws of nature are situated in this infinite field of creativity from which all of the applied sciences, mathematics, physics, everything, the laws of nature, the laws of science, everything arises from out of this field. That is the fourth state of consciousness. And as the mind goes into this field and out of this field, there's a sense of transformation that takes place in the nervous system, so that this quietness that is experienced and characterized by the fourth state of consciousness is felt in the nervous system. So after one finishes meditating, saying his meditation, comes out of the meditation, there's a deep sense of silence. But as we engage in the activity, we do our perfunctory chores, working, running errands, shopping, doing what humans do. This silence that was gained during this deep rest in meditation begins to subside. and eventually is lost. And as we go back into this field, more of the silence is infused into our nervous system, and structures are refined. This nervous system become more integrated, systems operate more harmoniously, and that silence becomes to last a little longer in silence. And as we continue to encounter the fourth state of consciousness by taking our minds into and out of the unified field of the fourth state of consciousness, the transcendental state of consciousness, the experience of spirituality, all of these words describe a state of non-being where the intelligence of creation is infused into the mind. So as a long period of time, practice of this meditation over time, longitudinal practice of in and out of the fourth state of consciousness, we arrive at a state of consciousness where there's a coexistence of two states of consciousness simultaneously. The state of consciousness that's obtained in waking state of consciousness coexists with this infinite silence that has been infused into our physiology during the practice of self-reflection. Self-reflection is a meditation technique using a tool of the mind. The mind tool is called mantra. A mantra is a meaningless sound that allows the mind to settle down to experience its own nature. Otherwise, the mind is engaged by virtue of the senses, hearing, smelling, seeing, tasting, with the objective material world. And so when we are introduced to a higher level of knowledge, then we begin to experience the total range of creation. The total range of creation is from the infinite field of pure being, unmanifest intelligence, all the way to that field becoming active and manifest. So the reality of unmanifest and manifest reality becomes an individual experience. It's not a theory. It's not about reading about the transcendental field or reading about the fourth state of consciousness, but experiencing the fourth state of consciousness, because knowledge is based in experience. It's theoretical knowledge and experiential knowledge. And experiential knowledge gives rise to knowledge, gives rise to complete knowledge consisting of theory and practice. So from a theoretical point of view, we can talk about the nature of reality consists of the manifest and the unmanifest, and that the source of relativity is the unmanifest value of life that gives rise to all of the temporal phenomena. Then meditation becomes a means by which the mind, in my self-reflection, and there are other types of meditations that can access and does access this field. That's why meditation has been along. Some people are so evolved that they spontaneously slip into this field of pure being and have no systematic way of repeating it, but they are aware of it. And it could be triggered by some type of beautiful phenomenon in the relative world. I think William Blake, the great author and poet, talks about the experience of non-being. And many great poets and artists who are very evolved have this experience. My technique is a systematic technique by which one can always access the infinite field of pure intelligence, which is the fourth state of consciousness, transcendental consciousness, in which all of the intelligence that's manifest through all of the diversified forms and points of consciousness, and the relativity is changing, is experienced and infused into the mind. And so once this practice has been done for a sufficient period of time, then one begins to identify with this infinite silence as the self, rather than my biological self. Nothing in the biological world, then once this state of consciousness has been obtained, cannot overshadow overshadow the self. For example, if one is what I mean by overshadowed, if one is looking at this is a lighter, and from a state of unenlightenment without being aware of one's nature, perception is the only thing that exists. So when I look at the flower, or you look at the flower, the only experience is the experience of the flower. The self is lost, or self is overshadowed by the experience of the object of perception. However, by virtue of experiencing repeatedly the transcendental consciousness, the transcendental self, the self becomes calibrated in a way that my authentic self is realized. And my authentic self becomes the transcendental self, which is a self that's never changing. And as I become aware of that reality at all times, no matter what I'm doing in activity, my authorship of action is surrendered. In a state of ignorance, if you will, in ignorance of not being aware of the true self, I take ownership. And that there is no dichotomy. There's no sense of my authentic self and nature. The total reality consists of two aspects, I said, Purusha, spirit, consciousness, and nature. One is changing, nature is changing, but Purusha and spirit never changes. So the relative small I assumes authorship in a state of ignorance. But through the practice of long-term meditation, identification with the authentic self becomes predominant, that I am an impulse of pure creative intelligence that has a body with its function, and I can navigate the terrestrial plane, but not as the engager of action, but as the witness to the activity that is done by nature. So we have this individualized aspect of being and authorship of I as the person in the small self for a long period of time until consciousness brings us to a very specific point in our journey on the card of time where we meet a teacher of wisdom, a teacher of consciousness, a teacher who can give you the experience of the authentic self. Now, books, the Bible, they are about men who have this awareness. And basically, that's it. It's always a story about somebody who has realized God. But you as the reader cannot have that same experience because God is not a book. God is not a story. So knowledge is theoretical, it's about something, and experiential. And it doesn't become meaningful or real, if you will, until you actually experience it and you can witness. So this in and out of the transcendental state of consciousness becomes really now the aim of life by which to authenticate the self, validate my true self. I am not the body. I am not the gender. I have a body. I have a gender. I have an ethnicity for evolutionary purposes in the relative plane of life, in nature. But the source of that is the unmanifest, infinite field of creativity from which all relative phenomena have their basis. And when this, through the practice of self-reflection, has been cultivated, the nervous system has been cultivated by going in and out of the transcendental field of consciousness and experiencing the unique state of physiology, restful alertness. Then there arises a state of awareness where I am not the actor, I am not the doer. I am a witness to the action done by nature in proportion with my own karma that I have created. But I am not that. I am a witness. I am the self. That's called self, the big S, the capital self, the transcendental self. And when I cultivate my nervous system to maintain two states of consciousness simultaneously, waking state of consciousness and transcendental state of consciousness simultaneously, then that state of consciousness is called cosmic consciousness and is the fifth state of consciousness. So we have waking state of consciousness, dreaming state of consciousness, sleeping state of consciousness, transcendental consciousness into which the mind goes in and out of, cannot maintain this state of non-being, but temporarily experiences that state of non-being so that it can culture and nurture the nervous system, cultivate the nervous system to maintain this state of consciousness even while one is engaged. And when one has cultivated that through the practice of meditation, one is said to be cosmic conscious. And cosmic consciousness, the coexistence of waking state and transcendental state at the same time, that is the coexistence of infinite silence along with activity. So one is engaged in activity, but one is not overshadowed by that activity, as in the case of being unaware of myself, in which perception, in any gesture of perception, I am lost. So in the perception, doing cosmic consciousness, when I look at this beautiful flower, not only does the flower exist, but I, in my transcendental, authentic cosmic self, exist right along with this. I'm not overshadowed. I exist and relativity exists. Being and relativity coexisting as an experience is a cosmic, to use cosmic, universal. Why cosmic? Because the universal self is the self of every I. The perception of I. When you ask someone, who are you? This reference, I, is an individualized impulse of this creative intelligence in isolation from itself. And once through the practice of spiritual discipline, the small self becomes united with the larger self, the cosmic self, then authorship is no longer, is surrendered. Authorship belongs to nature, and I belong to the eternal. I am the witness of that which is taking place. Fourth state of consciousness, fifth state of consciousness, cosmic consciousness. Now, when cosmic consciousness, as we continue to practice through meditation, then there's something called this dichotomy, this coexistence between myself and relative self merge. And the only thing that exists now is my awareness of the cosmic self being an expression of myself, my total self. My lower self, and this activity that had me alienated from myself no longer exists. There's a sense of just myself as being omnipresent, myself as being consciousness. And yet I see the relative world and its boundaries, but there is now developed in me a sense of that same self in my perceptions, in what I see, and what I think, and what I feel, and what I witness. Everything has that quality of universal intelligence that was experienced in the fourth state of consciousness. That infinite silence seemed to be omnipresent. It seems to be everywhere, and I begin to sense that it is there. And that's called God consciousness. God being an acronym for the generator and the organizer and the dispenser, the laws of nature that create and dispense everything. I become cognizant of that reality. That reality then gives a sense of devotion. One through a practice of devotion. We don't talk about a sense of devotion, a devotion to that. The awareness of God yields a surrender to that, because one's individuality is surrendered in cosmic consciousness. And that surrender grows deeper and deeper and becomes more profound. And one has generally, in the sense of a tradition, an individual Godhead. If you're Yehudi, Hashem becomes perceptible as infinite intelligence, the source of not only myself, but the source of everything in existence. That is the cognition of the generator, the organizer, dispenser. And it's based upon physiologic conditioning, a physiologic refinement of the physiology to optimize functionally, which has then based in neurological integrity. The hemispheric symmetry becomes activated. There are a number of physiological correlates to different states of consciousness, and perception then based in consciousness and our own experience of inner awakeness continue to grow. And that sixth state is called God consciousness. What is God consciousness? God consciousness is being aware on an emotional level, on a subjective level, on a perceptual level, of seeing that intelligence and the orderliness and the laws that administer relativity within one's own awareness. It's no longer a theory, it's no longer an abstract thought, but it becomes a perceptible reality of seeing the unity of diversity. Diversity maintains itself, yes, because it's relative, but my consciousness is such that I am in sync now with the organizing intelligence that structures the diversity, which allows me perceptually to see the generator, the organizer, and the dispenser. That is called God. Sixth state of consciousness. The seventh state of consciousness, when all that there is, the intensity of this silence, all that exists in unity consciousness is pure silence, infinite silence, and a witness, and the sense of I-ness as I am the silence. Everything is the silence. That is the perception of the unity of diversity, not as a theoretical, abstract thought, but as a living, breathing reality. And one's purpose becomes, from a cosmic purpose, back to the fifth state of consciousness, cosmic consciousness. In cosmic consciousness, the goal of evolution is reached. The goal of evolution, human birth, is the purpose of human birth is to evolve into cosmic sense of self. In cosmic sense of self, individuality is surrendered. I am no longer the doer, but the witness that is acting on behalf of the universal intelligence that structures everything. And so one becomes then living in the sanctuary of God, living fifth state of consciousness. Cosmic consciousness is the state of consciousness of the actor being nature, and myself as being the witness to the actions of nature. And God consciousness becomes a state of being a source in the universe for that creative intelligence, because my individuality has been surrendered, and one lives in a state where it becomes, the expression becomes true, not my will, but thine be done. Individuality is surrendered in a state of consciousness where the will of the individual has been subsumed by the will of the universe. That's cosmic intelligence, and that's the life of an enlightened man or an enlightened woman who has cultivated the full potential of the human potential to live in an exalted state of being, which is in harmony, not in violation, not in sin. For you only use the word sin. What is sin? Sin is living outside of the will of God, violating the will of God, doing behaviors that facilitate facilitate degradation of the physiology. In other words, they say in the scripture, the wages of sin is death. So you do something that has a deleterious impact on the physiological mechanism, and the physiological mechanism is stressful and sluggish, and perception is dull, and death and decay ensues as a function of being alienated from the generator, the organizer, and dispenser, alienated from God. God, in this sense, is not an anthropomorphic he or she that's punishing you. God is the organizing intelligence and the source of creation, not something that is apart from creation. God is the creation, one with the creation, not an anthropomorphic entity that's judging and punishing. People punish themselves by the choices they make when they violate divine law or the laws of nature. So living in the state of pure being starts with cosmic life. Cosmic life is the moment of the glorious life. The glorious life begins in cosmic consciousness, where one is the witness to the activity and begins to experience the all-time state of infinite being, which is an internal joy, which in its joy is a sense of the all-time presence of God. So when one lives in that state of joy, then one is not overshadowed by even events that are not joyful in the life. Yes, things happen, accident happens, loved one dies, but one is no longer overshadowed by that because one is established in their true selves. And then God consciousness, the intensity of that infant silence begin to grow and express itself in all of our physiological modalities, our senses, what we see, what we hear, what we feel, and we can begin to feel that in others because the I in this reality is the I in every subjective reality. So consciousness knows itself. And so when we see something, as they say, you know something. And when you know something, you are one with it. Knowledge is the link between the observer and the observed. And so when that knowledge of consciousness grows within, consciousness begins to see itself as the ultimate reality. So that's just a brief talk of the 7 states of consciousness that's based upon a refined, increasingly refiner function of the nervous system brought about through the practice of meditation. And meditation is a way of taking the mind, using a mind tool. What is a mind tool? A mantra. A mantra is a sound with a known effect from the ancient tradition from which we get these mantras. And these mantras have been called laws of nature. They've been called a lot of things, but really the truth is they're sounds by which the physiology resonates with and refines the physiology and attunes the physiology so that the physiology optimizes, becomes optimum. And when the physiology is optimum and the perception is optimized, then one is in a unified higher state of consciousness. So these are 7 states of consciousness brought about through the practice of deep meditation. Meditation been done through many traditions. In Kabbalah, we have meditation technique of meditating on the Lashon HaKodesh, sacred sounds. For example, we say in Kabbalah, the Ein Sof. What is the Ein Sof? Another name for the absolute pure field of being, that which is beyond material reality and the source of all materiality. We have from emanation, formation, creation. We have this energy coming from the unmanifest, manifesting itself, and the unmanifest would be Ein Sof. So one would meditate, for example, on the word Ein. Ein has a particular effect, and that's just one form. That would be maybe Jewish meditation. In another tradition, a Hindu tradition, perhaps it is the name of a deity, a relative deity. You can read this In Christian meditation, or in my meditation, the name Yud Shin Sharuk Ayin. Yud, this Yud Shin Sharuk Ayin. Yeshua. Yeshua being a name that is a sequence of sacred letters and mathematics and sacred letters, a sequence of intelligent sacred letters. These intelligent letters, Yud has a mathematical value, Shin has a mathematical value, Sharuk has a mathematical value, Ayin. So this sequence, Yud, Shin, Sharuk, Ayin, has a profound intelligence associated with it, a cosmic intelligence, because this is the language of God. This is the language of creation, Lashon HaKodesh. And the Lashon HaKodesh is the tool, when meditated upon, that takes the mind into the infinite field of pure being and activates all of the potential, the intelligent potential associated with the name. A name is a vibration that the soul rides upon in time. In this case, the Lashon HaKodesh name is a means by which the mind can access the Ayin self, the infinite field. These letters Yud, Shin, Ayin. Yud, Shin, Sharuk, Ayin arise from infinity up into relativity with a certain orthographic form, letters, with an intelligence that's incomprehensible, coming from pure being, and has a neurological effect that's soothing and elevating and holy. Holy because what? Holy comes from the word wholeness, because making the individual whole and complete. Whole and complete would be one with the Creator. So there are different words, mantras, sounds that you have across different cultures that people engage in their meditation, which is called mental prayer, if you will. Mental prayer is a higher discipline than verbal prayer. And prayer is a means of connecting to the higher self. So when you pray, you're not praying to a God up in the sky. You are invoking your higher self, your soul, that part of the neshama. Neshama in 3 words, that higher soul. And so this is a beautiful beginning point for those of you who are interested in meditation, different types of meditation, different forms of meditation, to engage your intellect and pursue different forms of meditation for activating the full potential of the humans. We are made in the image of God. Therefore, it is said in Psalms 82:6, ye are gods, but ye shall die like men. That means that if we are God, we have the potential of God consciousness, the awareness of God. The awareness of God is the awareness of the infinite organizing intelligence that is the only reality. And this is why we say in Israel, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one. There's only one. One infinite source of pure being that manifests itself through infinite diversity. And I am that, thou art that, all of this is that. Nothing else exists but that. God is the only true existence. Everything else is a relative expression of God that is always in a state of change. Evolution, maintaining it, and then dissolution and dying. What we call death, but there's no such thing as death. It's just transition. So we transition into this world based upon the journey of our soul and actions of our soul down the corridor of time. We have a physiology, we maintain it for a while, and then it begins to dissolve or decay. And then we transition out of this world back into infinity, into the infinite source of consciousness, relative to the level of consciousness, in proportion to the level of consciousness that has been obtained. Here, if you do nothing, you get nothing. So we go to the highest heavens based upon what we've cultivated. So this is just a short talk, introductory talk on the nature of reality. The nature of reality consists of manifest, unmanifest, the changing and the non-changing. The non-changing is cosmic. We are an individualized impulse of that cosmic intelligence. And by virtue of our mind, because our awareness is a stream of consciousness, a stream of thought. Consciousness is a stream of thought. We use, therefore, a thought, the mechanism of thought, which is an impulse of energy, intelligence, and a particular sound. When it has no meaning, then the mind can engage itself vertically. Ordinarily, we're thinking longitudinally, but when we engage a thought that has meaning, no meaning to the intellect, but has a profound and known effect based upon holy traditions that have come to us down the corridor of time, then we begin to experience the true nature of the self, to experience cosmic self, our true self. And our true self is never dying. We never die. And our true self is holy, because that true self is the God. The true self is God. And as we meditate, all of the qualities associated with God, compassion, friendliness, love, gentleness, humility, they flower in our life because we are accessing the field from which all of these beautiful qualities come from. The potential for these qualities are hidden in the law of consciousness. And consciousness interacts with itself and has made certain sounds, they say, in certain traditions. And the rishis cognize these sounds as the laws of nature. And these sounds are administered, are given, are used as mantras. And their very nature is to engage the mind in its vertical thinking, so that as the mind settles down and experiences deeper aspects of its subconsciousness, the physiology is rectified, corrected, calibrated to optimize its function so that it ultimately can maintain. That's why we have a physical body. We're not spirit beings. We have a body with the spirit, with spirits with the body. But if we contact, the way we contact our self, our authentic self, our authentic self optimizes the potential inherent in this body as man. And man is made in the image of God to become God conscious, to become an agent of God in time. And this is why society is suffering, because people are identified not with the ultimate reality, but identifying themselves with biological proclivities, some type of way the body feels. They feel this way. It's all based in the body, and pleasure, those type of things. But those have a deleterious effect on the physiology because they're in violation of divine law. So I hope that you will appreciate, and this will be a catalyst for you to go and do your own research on the 7 states of consciousness, and hopefully encounter a mystic, a sage, a saint, a man of God on the corridor of time, who through his discipline and to holy tradition can introduce you to a technique that allows you to experience the authentic self. So may you be blessed and continue to grow on your odyssey in self-discovery and contemplate and explore the 7 states of consciousness.